Discover the incredible journey of this grandma, 5 surprising lessons that transformed her life. Betty's heart sank as she gazed out at her garden. The blooms seemed to dance in the rain, reminding her of the laughter that once filled her home. Now, each droplet echoed her solitude, and the vibrant petals were colorful ghosts of a family long gone. She was a retired schoolteacher in her late 70s, yet the years felt like a weight she carried alone, especially when her children moved on to big city lives, leaving their small-town roots behind. Betty clutched the faded pulse of memories like delicate flower petals, but isolation wrapped around her like ivy, persistent and choking. In need of distraction, she retreated to the attic, her sanctuary of forgotten dreams. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light peeking through a small window, leading her to an old trunk nestled in the corner, a treasure trove that had not felt the touch of hands in decades. As she unearthed it, the rusty hinges creaked, whispering secrets of the past. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out letters too fragile to touch, each one a reminder of her parents' sacrifices during the Great Depression, the struggles they endured echoing in her heart. But there was more. Amidst the letters lay old photographs and forgotten canvases, evidence of a passion for painting she had buried beneath responsibilities. As she explored the contents, Emma, her granddaughter, peered over her shoulder. Emma was struggling too, surrounded by professors who criticized her traditional art style. The unspoken bond between them tightened with each letter. Betty read, a painful reflection of their shared anxieties. "Don't let them silence you, Grandma," Emma murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Betty's heart raced. The fear in Emma's eyes mirrored her own insecurities. Was it too late for her? Could she really step into the light after so long hiding in the shadows? As she hesitated, bile rose in her throat. Their hearts were heavy with the weight of expectation. Society had painted a box around her, defining her role as solely a grandmother, a caretaker. Could she dare to step outside of that mold? Before they could descend deeper into this emotional abyss, the air thickened with urgency. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Betty clutched a photo of her younger self, paintbrush in hand, reality crashed in. She couldn't shake the feeling of insignificance, an emotion made worse as she stood at the edge of an unfinished dream. There was pressure demanding, ugly pressure to conform to a society that often overlooked the desires of women like her, women who had lives beyond motherhood. That looming mural project in town whispered possibilities to her, yet the thought of presenting it to the council set her thoughts racing. What if they shrugged her off? What if they laughed? Fear coursed through her, igniting a deep, hidden turmoil, longing for validation but staving off the rejection that had been too familiar. Betty found herself at a crossroads, her own voice trapped beneath years of self-doubt and the burden of quiet hardship. The mural she envisioned felt both liberating and terrifying, embodying not just her struggle but also the dreams she wished to pass on to Emma. As she wrestled with the complexities of her emotions, the need for recognition loomed large. Both women longed to stake their claim on their identities, but what if the world outside their sanctuary rejected them? With every heartbeat pounding in her ears, she felt the walls of uncertainty closing in, fiercely. Poised on the brink of expression, where any misstep could cost her everything. The stakes were high, and the mural lay unfinished, a haunting metaphor for their intertwined journeys, daring them to dream beyond the limits imposed on them. Tomorrow brought another meeting, and an unquenchable fear pulsed through her veins, entangled with a flicker of hope. If she could find the strength to confront the council, perhaps she'd offer Emma the courage she so desperately needed, and maybe even reclaim her own creative spirit. But could she brave the storm brewing in her heart? The answers lay tangled in uncertainty, with both women on the precipice of self-discovery. The morning sun poured through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the familiar surroundings. Betty stirred her coffee, steam rising like dreams yet to be realized. Today felt different, she could almost taste the ambition lingering in the air. It was as if the universe whispered promises of change. Yet, apprehension gnawed at her insides. The council meeting loomed ahead, a gauntlet she had decided to run. What would be the first step in translating her vision for the mural into a reality? Did it truly matter if they laughed? She hadn't painted in decades, her hands felt foreign against the smooth bristles of a brush. But as she gazed at her reflection in the dark liquid of her coffee, she also saw the shadow of an artist who had not yet vanished. Determined to prepare herself, she pulled the trunk from the attic again, dust swirling in a chaotic dance. This time, the contents sparked a contemplative fire within her. Each letter she reread unfolded stories of resilience and courage. If they could survive the hardest of times, she murmured, why can't I share my passion? Betty set the letters aside and unearthed the old canvases once more. The vibrant colors captured the essence of her early endeavors, emotion spilling from strokes she recognized as her own. As she lifted a particular canvas, her heart raced with nostalgia and regret. It depicted a scene from her childhood, a colorful garden, eerily similar to the one she now tended. In an impulsive decision, she began to paint, the world outside fading into a distant hum. Brush in hand, she poured her heart onto the fabric, each stroke surfacing feelings locked away for far too long. This small act ignited a flicker of confidence, a whisper that maybe this was where she needed to be. Every stroke is a part of me, she pondered, realizing she was reclaiming fragments of her lost identity. The vibrancy of color revived something dormant within, a flicker of who she had once been. Yet, a troubling thought disrupted the momentum. What if this was just a fleeting moment of creativity? Could she really present herself to the council after such a long absence from the canvas? As the hours slipped away, she felt a surge of determination push back against her doubts. She still had Emma's voice echoing in her mind, the encouragement she had desperately needed. Perhaps her passion wouldn't die alone in the attic. Maybe it could serve as a lifeline, not just for her, but for Emma as well. She reached for her notebook and jotted down a few ideas for the mural, her mind alight with possibilities. The sun setting beyond the horizon was inspiring in its beauty. But a voice of reason crept in, a familiar companion that whispered fears louder than aspirations. What if the council dismissed her outright? Would the laughter be directed at her? The idea of ridicule twisted her stomach into tight knots, but Betty forced herself to breathe through it. It was time to challenge the narrative she'd allowed to dominate her life. Tomorrow, she repeated to herself, tomorrow is about more than fear, it's about forging my own path. As she pondered her plans, she envisioned the impact her mural could have not just on canvas but in reshaping perceptions of age and creativity. Would anyone else out there feel inspired by her story? It was a risk worth taking. Betty gathered her supplies, feeling the storm of emotions within her. They were not merely fear but excitement and determination. The very act of painting became a rehearsal for the confrontation looming ahead, a testament to her evolving spirit. As night fell, the weight of doubt still clung to her but intertwined with hope. Tomorrow would be her stage. Bit by bit, she was chipping away at the expectations that had boxed her in for decades. But even as she laid her head to rest, another question loomed: was she brave enough to step fully into the role of a creator again? The answer, tangled in the silence of the night, set the stage for what came next. The final challenge awaited, and she could either embrace it or retreat within the confines of her quiet world. Betty closed her eyes, the painted canvas now a vivid dreamscape, and waited for morning light to awaken a possibility she once thought lost forever. The next morning felt charged with an electric tension that propelled Betty out of bed. The sun streamed through the window, yet it no longer merely illuminated her kitchen, it ignited a sense of purpose within her. As she took a deep breath, she could almost hear the faint echo of her heart, urging her to embrace the day ahead. Betty dressed deliberately, choosing colors that mirrored the vibrancy she aimed to inject into her mural. Something about the act felt revolutionary. Instead of retreating into muted shades, she was stepping into the light. After warming up some coffee, she pulled her notebook from the table and scanned her jotted notes, the ink still fresh with possibility. Plans and ideas swirled in her mind, each one a challenge to the trepidation that had held her captive for too long. Arriving at the council building, she felt as if she were at the base of a mountain. It loomed above her, imposing yet full of promise. The chatter inside the hall represented both the community she had been part of and the unknown judgment she feared. As she made her way to the designated room and settled in, she caught snippets of conversation, others discussing art, community projects, and legacy. It struck her, those conversations were not one-sided. There she was, ready to contribute her voice, but the doubt crept in with thunderous clarity. What if her contributions didn't matter? As the meeting commenced, the council members took turns presenting their ideas and proposals. Each voice reinforced a growing internal conflict for Betty. She admired their confidence, but with every excitement-filled proposal, her insecurities resurfaced, like a relentless tide washing over her resolve. Am I fool for thinking I belong here? She questioned internally, the weight of her hesitation pressing down. Then it was her turn. As she stood before the members, a wave of nausea hit her, but she steadied herself, grounding her thoughts in the emotions swirling inside. This is for you, Emma, she whispered under her breath, pulling inspiration from the wellspring of her past. She began to speak about her vision for the mural, her words shaky at first, but they gradually gained momentum. As she unfolded her ideas, she noticed more than just a flicker of interest among the members. She saw something akin to recognition. This wasn't simply art, it was a story, a testament to resilience, age, and the human spirit. She began to share her nostalgic connection to the garden, how it captured not only her youth but also her belief that art could stem from any stage of life. The mural would not be just a painting, it would challenge perceptions, invite dialogue, and inspire others. With each sentence, she felt the tide of doubt recede, replaced by an exhilarating rush of confidence. Ending her presentation was both a relief and a revelation. Betty realized that sharing her passion had ignited something within her, something almost buried under years of self-doubt. The praise that followed was a symphony of voices rallying behind her dream, an endorsement she had not predicted. Yet even amidst the warm reception, something nagged at her, a sense of vulnerability now exposed. As she settled back into her seat, Betty couldn't erase the uncertainty inching back into her thoughts. Would the excitement she felt today be enough to carry her through the subsequent challenges? The validation she received felt like a double-edged sword, invigorating yet fear-inducing. After all, the council's approval was but one step in a much deeper journey. Navigating through an emotional storm of exhilaration and dread, she packed up her materials as the meeting adjourned. The world outside felt different, brighter and yet daunting. The profound realization that she had indeed taken a step toward reclaiming her artistry fueled her spirit, but the nagging awareness that she was still vulnerable lingered. As she walked toward her car, the conversation in her mind shifted. She was not just fighting for a mural, she was fighting for her identity. Would she be able to sustain this newly ignited spark? And as she drove home, the weight of the canvas tied to her dream settled in the backseat amongst the resolved thoughts and lingering doubts. Tomorrow would decide how far she could push these boundaries. The mural's journey had just begun, but would she face the upcoming hurdles with the same courage she found today? The next day dawned with a crispness that was both invigorating and chilling. Betty woke up earlier than usual, the anticipation of the challenge ahead galvanizing her resolve. The sunlight filtering through the curtains felt like the dawn of a new era rather than just another day. She could sense that the mural was about much more than paint and canvas. It was a conduit for her deepest aspirations, her story yearning to be told. Fueled by an adrenaline she hadn't felt in years, she donned her work clothes, old jeans and a paint-splattered shirt and prepared for the next encounter with the council. She telegraphed her intentions to herself in the mirror. This time, she would foster not only her vision but ensure that her own voice vibrated boldly amidst the chorus of self-doubt. Arriving at the council building again gave her tremors of familiarity and a hint of anxiety. Today, however, she wasn't just another attendee clinging to her thoughts. With every step up the stairs, she felt a shift. She was ascending not just physically but personally. Today, she would ensure that her mural was not a mere anecdote, but a pivotal piece of the community puzzle, one that needed to be celebrated, discussed, and collectively owned. As the meeting began, the previous day's applause echoed in her mind. Encouraged, she focused on her vision, ready to listen as much as to contribute. But as each member spoke, highlighting their plans and projects, that familiar tide of self-doubt whispered against her determination. Each decisive pitch made her question whether her mural could possibly hold significance in the backdrop of their extensive proposals. It was her turn again. The weight of expectation closed in, accompanied by the haunting uncertainty of public scrutiny. But as she stood before them, armed with her notes and stifled passion, a quiet determination flared within her chest. "This is not just a mural," she asserted, her voice steadying. "It's a conversation starter, a bridge to our shared experiences." She pulled from the essence of all she had encountered since yesterday, her connection to the garden, the stories of those who had walked through it, and the unseen sculptures of memories etched within its soil. She portrayed the mural as an artistic dialogue, drawing people in: children, young adults, the elderly. This was not only an opportunity for her self-expression but a platform for others to reflect on their own histories. As her words tumbled out, she noticed the council members shifting in their seats, leaning in, absorbing her vision. The acknowledgement felt almost surreal, as if she were casting away the chains that had previously confined her relevance. When Betty finished, silence initially enveloped the room, her heart raced with anticipation. And then, it burst forth, first one voice, then another, a flood of enthusiasm. Questions tumbled out about colors, themes, and involvement. They were not just accepting her proposal, they were engaging with it, a coalescence of ideas sparking in the air between them. However, in the midst of the whirlpool of enthusiasm, there lurked an unsettling realization. She was still moving through uncharted waters, swimming against the current of her limitations. What if her confidence faltered? Would they still respect the vision she now fought so passionately to portray? Driving home that evening, Betty's original excitement reverberated through her, but so did the uncertainty crawling back into view. She was standing on the precipice of something transformative, a wave of change that could wash her fears away or drown her under its weight. She parked the car but remained seated, staring into the distance where her mural would one day grace the landscape. Deep within, a question lingered: could her newfound voice withstand the currents of adversity, or would it fracture under the pressure? As the sun set behind her, painting the sky in shades of freedom and struggle, she knew that the next step would not only define her mural but her very self. A storm surged within her, transforming her doubts into a desperate need for clarity. Tomorrow would reveal deeper challenges, testing not only her vision but her ability to stand firm. Would she be ready to face the uncomfortable truths that lay ahead? Betty woke up the next morning to the sound of rain tapping softly against her window, a stark contrast to the fiery determination she felt simmering within. As she brewed her morning coffee, she stared out at the grey sky, contemplating the conflicts that awaited her. This wasn't just a mural, it was her concrete contribution to the fabric of the community, an expression of empowerment she had subtly craved for years but never fully embraced. With each sip of her steaming mug, her anxiety began to coalesce into purpose. Today was not merely another meeting, it was a transformative opportunity for introspection and action. She mentally rehearsed her statements, ensuring her voice would stay steady amidst any rebuttals. As she got dressed, she felt a tactile reminder of her mission: the paint-splattered shirt, the rough denim, each stain a badge of her journey thus far. Arriving at the council building, the atmosphere thrummed with a mix of expectation and apprehension. Though she had gained some confidence, the prospect of defending her vision against critical eyes loomed heavy. As she prepared to speak, she recalled her promise to make the mural more than a reflection of her own story. It would reveal threads of other lives interwoven with hers, seeking validation within the mural's colors. Inside the meeting room, the council members appeared more curious than dismissive. After a brief round of introductions, Betty found herself in the spotlight again, but this time with clearer intent. She illustrated the mural's potential as a vibrant tapestry of community stories, urging them to visualize not just paint but shared histories, struggles, and triumphs intermingling on the canvas of her design. However, as she presented, a familiar voice within her disrupted the conversation of empowerment with skepticism. Bethel, a senior member of the council known for his stern demeanor, raised a brow. "What real experience do you have, Betty? What if our community doesn't embrace this idea?" His question pierced through her determination like a shard of ice, sending rippling doubts through her veins. How could she defend a vision she had yet to fully live? The weight of untested aspirations loomed over her, threatening to drag her back into familiar waters of insecurity. She paused. Perhaps this was the moment to confront the very essence of her fears head-on. "Mr. Bethel," she began, her voice catching slightly, "I don't claim to have the mastery of someone who has devoted their life to the arts. But I carry the heart of our community's stories. My age and experiences have shaped me into who I am, and I believe that vibrancy can thrive in our vulnerabilities." Her words seemed to hang in the air, and the room fell silent. For a brief second, she sensed a shift and acknowledgement of authenticity that transcended mere expertise. This wasn't just about paint, it was about resilience, growth, and the courage to be imperfect. "Let this mural be a space for us to embrace our complexities," she pressed on, more convinced by her own words now. "It's not merely about whether we exist as artists or citizens, it's about unearthing the mosaic of lives that deserve recognition." The ensuing discussion burbled with newfound curiosity. Questions and ideas cascaded forth: could they involve local schools, bring in local artists, or host painting workshops? Each inquiry was a step deeper into her original vision, infused with a sense of urgency and communal responsibility. Yet, lurking amid the applause was that unsettling voice again. The realization crept in that while she had provided a solid foundation for her mural, she now faced another mountain to climb: engagement. Could she truly invite others into her world and help them find their own stories woven into her vision? Leaving the building, her pulse raced with mingled exhilaration and fear. One chapter was drawing closed, and another beckoned ominously. With her heart still pounding in her ears, she wondered if her growth could genuinely extend beyond the mural itself. The storm clouds had parted slightly, but darkness lingered. Tomorrow's challenges would reveal not just the complexities of her mural but the depths of her courage. Would she be able to involve others meaningfully, or would her fear of exposure draw her back into the shadows? The anticipation hung heavy with possibility as she stepped into the uncertain light. Betty sat at her kitchen table, her usual morning solitude disturbed by the metallic drone of a nearby construction site. It was a steady reminder that change was both possible and daunting. The previous day's discussions replayed in her mind, revealing something deeper than just insecurity, a realization that engaging with others could be the key to her growth. Alone, she pondered her next steps, but with each fleeting thought, doubt pricked at her resolve. Determined to confront the challenge, she decided to reach out to a few neighbors whom she knew had artistic inclinations. There was Evelyn, a retired art teacher who had long since kept her talents hidden, and Marcus, a young street photographer with an eye for vibrant storytelling through the lens. It dawned on her that this project could be as much about connecting with them as about the mural itself. She made 2 quick phone calls, her heart racing at the prospect of inviting others into her vision. How would Marcus respond, she questioned herself, knowing the generation gap might create an awkward barrier. Despite her uncertainty, when Evelyn readily agreed to meet, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Later that day, Betty gathered her material sketches, color palettes, and notes reflecting her inspirations. As she wove through the puddles lining the sidewalk, she felt tangible excitement blooming as her purpose danced through her thoughts. She visualized Evelyn's gentle guidance through the complexities of color theory and Marcus's fresh perspective. Perhaps their unique experiences would challenge her own preconceptions. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, Betty welcomed Evelyn into her living room. The warmth of the light mirrored the ease of their conversation as she shared her ideas for the mural. Evelyn listened intently, her eyes sparkling with the possibility of a revival. "You know, Betty, this mural could reflect our struggles as much as our successes," she said. "Art isn't just a pretty picture, it's a doorway into our souls." It struck Betty profoundly. Art could indeed be a medium for vulnerability, an exploration of the unrefined, unvarnished truths of their experiences. Could Evelyn's insights elevate her own interpretation of community storytelling? They brainstormed methods to engage others, from workshops to open call invitations. The thrill of collaboration washed over her, and it was intoxicating. As they forged ideas, Betty felt her self-doubt dissipating, replaced by anticipation. That evening, as she methodically plotted her short presentation for Marcus, she reflected on the fear she felt just days ago. Each decision, every conversation, was a step toward not just expanding her mural but expanding herself. Could she continue this progression into a deeper understanding of her motives and desires for the project? Marcus entered her space with a confident gait, laughter lighting up his demeanor as he scanned the sketches spread before him. "So, what is the grand plan?" he asked, sinking into the chair opposite her. His openness disarmed her momentarily. "I want to weave our stories into this mural," she replied, revealing her intentions. He raised an eyebrow but nodded thoughtfully. "Well, let us make it real then. Invite the voices that don't often get heard." Acquiescing to his challenge, Betty considered the neighborhoods that had remained voiceless. This wasn't merely a mural, it was a platform for transformation, a narrative awash with complexity and authenticity. In that moment, Betty confronted an unsettling truth: they weren't just artists, they were conduits for shared experiences. Faced with the challenge of honoring every narrative without losing herself, she felt the weight of the responsibility settle upon her shoulders yet again. As the shadows lengthened across the walls, Betty realized that her fear of exposure could not hinder the journey ahead. She would find strength in vulnerability, and perhaps uncover aspects of herself that lay dormant. The next phase of her mission loomed before her, pulling her further outward. Would she be able to uplift and unify those voices, or would the pressure of expectations breed discontent within her project? The ever-pressing question lingered like an echo in her mind as she gathered the sketches, her anticipation mounting with the possibility of exploration awaiting her. The following morning, Betty awoke with a renewed sense of purpose breathing life into her ambitions. The construction site had transformed from a nagging nuisance into a symbolic backdrop for her own transformation. Each clang and buzz resonated with the pounding of her heart. Today was not just another day, it was a pivotal turning point. She put the kettle on, her mind racing through potential ideas for the mural workshop. How could she ensure that every voice was not just heard but integrated into their collective narrative? The thought made her stomach flutter with excitement and anxiety. Would they feel as invested in the project as she was, or would her insecurities make them hold back? After a quick breakfast, she set her plan into motion. The first step was to draft a flyer inviting community members to share their stories for the mural. Sitting at her kitchen table, she pulled out her watercolor paints, allowing colors to whirl around as she crafted each word carefully. "Join us, share your story, be part of our mural," she wrote, her hand steady despite the urgency bubbling inside her. The realization that this would be a celebration of their truths pushed her forward. Once the flyers were printed, she walked through the neighborhood, grappling with a sense of both vulnerability and determination. Every door she knocked on felt like an extension of herself, a leap into uncharted waters. Each face that greeted her held potential stories just waiting to emerge, but doubt gnawed at her. What if they don't want to open up? She questioned whether her intentions would resonate. Yet, with each interaction, her apprehensions slowly began to dissipate. Mr. Thompson, an elderly neighbor with a keen understanding of the neighborhood's history, shared memories of the street's evolution. He recounted tales of joy intermingled with struggles. With every anecdote, Betty jotted down notes, each one reinforcing her belief in the mural as a tapestry of individual experiences. A sense of connection knitted itself between them, solidifying her resolve. By the time she reached Marcus's apartment later that afternoon, her energy was palpable. She had gathered an array of perspectives and insights, confident that together they could cultivate a mural imbued with authentic stories. "I've had such incredible conversations today," she said, her excitement spilling over as she relayed Mr. Thompson's poignant memories. Marcus leaned back in his chair, observing her keenly. "You're beginning to see it, aren't you? This mural isn't just colors on a wall. It's a legacy, a conversation starter," he asserted, his expression growing serious. "But remember, you've got to be the bridge. The stories might uncover ugly truths too, and you'll need to navigate them with care." Betty felt a wave of heat rise through her. The weight of Marcus's words sank in. Could she genuinely hold space for those challenging narratives? Encountering the darker elements of their history could shift her perception. This moment crystallized her ambition, and instead of flinching away from the fear he instilled, she embraced it as a necessary part of their journey. As they discussed the stories they would incorporate, an unmistakable bond began to form, an alliance based purely on respect for each other's artistry and shared vision. In these moments, Betty experienced a realization: she was not merely directing a mural. She was curating a living exhibit fueled by emotional honesty. Embracing vulnerability would forge deeper connections, both within the project and herself. That evening, Betty sank into her bed, her hands still buzzing with creativity and compassion. Yet sleeping was elusive. Images of buried stories danced behind her eyelids. What if someone shared a narrative that shattered her preconceived notions? The fear clashed with her desire. Was she ready to confront the painful histories of those she tried to uplift? Riddled with anticipation and apprehension, she knew this project was about to carve her path for the future. And as the moonlight slanted across her room like a whisper of truth, she wondered, could the mural shine a light on collective resilience, or would it reveal fractures she wasn't equipped to mend? With this question echoing in her mind, a pause enveloped her, hinting at the emotional depth that awaited in the days to come. Betty awoke the next morning feeling the weight of uncertainty still hovering over her. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating her scattered notes and sketches. It was a crucial day, the day she would host her first workshop. The thought set her pulse racing, and she could feel the intensity of anticipation thrumming in her veins. However, underneath that excitement lay the gnawing fear of revealing her vulnerabilities. She prepared the small community room in the basement of her building, breathing in the smell of fresh paint mingling with the wood and glue of craft supplies. She had arranged chairs in a circle, a decision aimed at creating an intimate atmosphere. "This is about connection," she murmured to herself, trying to anchor her wavering confidence. As participants began to trickle in, her heart pounded louder. First was Mrs. Palladino, the chatty neighbor from across the hall, her warm smile a reassuring presence. Then came younger faces, two teenagers, both clutching sketchpads. Each arrival felt like a stitch in the fabric of her anxious thoughts, knitting her resolve tighter. "Welcome, everyone," Betty called, forcing a brightness into her voice. "Today, we embark on a journey together to explore our stories." She took a deep breath, feeling the room as energy swell with possibilities. "Let us start by sharing a memory that has shaped who we are. It could be anything, a moment of joy, a struggle, or a lesson learned." The room remained quiet, and she sensed her words hanging in the air, vulnerable as she felt. Did she overestimate their willingness to open up? The silence felt heavy, and she fought the urge to retreat into her own insecurities. Betty shifted in her seat, taking a sip of water in an attempt to maintain her composure. "I'll go first," she offered, raising her gaze. "When I was 10, I faced a significant challenge. I'll never forget how art became my escape from fear." She shared the story of a bind she found in her grandmother's attic, filled with paint and brushes. In that moment, she began to unravel the stories, liberating herself through honesty. She spoke fluidly, etching her truth into the atmosphere, allowing her passion to pierce the initial hesitation. Just as she felt compelled to shut down, Mrs. Palladino's voice broke the silence. "I've always wanted to express my experience in the war. It was a confusing time, and I never spoke much about it." The weight of her words ignited the room, and Betty felt a tide of warmth swell around her. One by one, stories began to flow. The depth of each memory revealed parts of themselves they had kept hidden. The teenagers shared their struggles with identity, while a single father recounted the hardship of juggling work and family. Each story was both gut-wrenching and exhilarating, and Betty began to absorb the emotional richness surrounding her, standing on the precipice of deeper understanding. As she guided the participants through brainstorming sessions, a happiness emerged within her. No longer focused on her inadequacies, she felt the shift occurring. She was becoming their lighthouse, guiding them through shadowed waters. The beautiful tapestry of shared experiences signified a legacy greater than she had envisioned. But underneath her growing confidence, a kernel of uncertainty lingered. Could she really navigate the pain and complexity of these narratives? With each voice shared, she recognized the pressing responsibility weighing on her shoulders. Honor their truths, but what if the stories unraveled deeper divides or ignited hidden resentments? Throughout the workshop, a new realization dawned upon her. She wasn't only curating stories, she was entering the very heart of her community's struggles. This project demanded more than just artistic direction, it demanded emotional resilience and an openness to confront the unspoken. As the day came to a close, she felt exhilarated yet uneasy, bursting with new ideas but aware of the emotional battles ahead. Each story resonated within her, entwining with her own narratives, deepening her understanding of creativity as a healing vessel. Exhausted and exhilarated, she packed her materials, ready to reflect on what happened that day. She couldn't have anticipated the powerful connections forged, yet doubt grazed her thoughts. Faces mingled with hidden emotions. Had she truly opened a door, or had she merely cracked it? As nighttime descended, an electric charge coursed through her. Could she sustain the momentum and dive deeper into these emotional truths, or would fear guide her back into silence? The next chapter loomed, echoing unanswered questions that would challenge her ability to connect on a profound level. How would she choose to wield her newfound influence? Tension hugged the air around Betty the next morning, the echoes of last night's workshop still reverberating in her mind. The thrill of being a guide lay stuck alongside the dread of failure. She brewed her coffee, trying to cement her newfound role in the center of her community's struggles while grappling with lingering fears. Seated at her kitchen table, the soft light illuminating sketches from the workshop, she reflected on the stories shared, the raw vulnerability that had been laid bare. She recalled Mrs. Palladino's voice, the tremor that had accompanied the recounting of war stories, a longing for acknowledgement resonating in every word. Betty couldn't shake off the feeling that these were more than mere recollections, they were invitations to deeper exploration. But could she handle such weighty responsibility? Quiet contemplation turned into a to-do list. With each item penned down, planning the next workshop, creating a supportive framework, addressing emotional challenges, her resolve sharpened. Yet in the back of her mind, questions lurked, undulating like ripples. How do I create a safe space for more personal narratives? The workshop hadn't ended, it had merely begun. She needed to seek balance not just in guiding others, but also in understanding her own strengths. Crafting art had always been her escape, her profound connection to emotions. Perhaps this community could also be an unfolding canvas. The prospect excited and terrified her in equal measure. Resolute, Betty headed to the local library, a sanctuary where she could dig into resources about facilitating discussions around emotional storytelling. Surrounded by rows of books, she found herself pulled toward anything that spoke about empathy and emotional intelligence. As she scanned through titles, moments from the previous night danced behind her eyelids, a tapestry woven with expressions of hurt, joy, and the pursuit of identity. As she settled in a cozy corner, immersed in pages discussing vulnerability, she felt her mind expanding. It was empowering to recognize her own experience of fear and how it intertwined with those she sought to help. It was in these vulnerabilities that she found relatability, a shared journey that could create stronger bonds. This was her insight. Her purpose wasn't only to guide but to also share her own fear and confusion. But as she absorbed knowledge, the knowing fears roiled again. Was she truly equipped? The strategic steps in her mind quickly devolved into spirals of self-doubt. That very uncertainty drove her to scribble a plan, one that centered around transparency. Invite vulnerability, cultivate compassion, she noted, a mantra for the workshops ahead. The drive home felt longer, her thoughts dancing with new plans and lingering uncertainties. Ideas flooded her, group exercises focused on expressive art, candid discussions about emotions behind those creations, and techniques for processing trauma through creative outlets. It was exhilarating, yet the reality of potential pushback loomed large. Back in her apartment, surrounded by a canvas waiting to be painted on, she sought to enact a new strategy. Would she lead herself and the group deep into their emotions, revealing scars that weren't fully healed? Pushing her boundaries meant challenging others, to a leap into their collective psychological depths. She began sketching a new vision for the next workshop, her heart racing with invigorated purpose. But doubts clawed again, uninvited and relentless. Would people truly trust her enough to share their pain, or would they sense her uncertainties, pulling back instead of opening up? As she breathed in the aroma of fresh paint, she felt the electric charge from the past workshop still pulsating through her. This was more than about her, it was about a journey of exploration. How far could she allow them and herself to dig into their own narratives? The question lingered as she finalized her plans. Later that evening, she received a message from Mrs. Palladino, a heartfelt thank you for initiating something that had long been bottled up. That message wrapped around her, igniting a spark of courage. Yet, with encouragement came the necessity of a greater challenge. Prepared to grow and face new emotional landscapes, Betty decided it was time for finer engagements. The next workshop had to tailor not just their stories but her own commitment to authenticity. The stakes were high, she needed to embrace the shadows of their shared histories without getting lost in them. As she settled into bed, exhausted yet invigorated, Betty steeled herself for the upcoming workshop. It was time to confront the next layer of complexity. This journey was about to get much deeper, and within her, the resolve began to crystallize. Would this new direction forge the deeper connections she longed for, or would it lead her into chasms she would struggle to navigate? The moment of truth was approaching. With the dawn of a new day breaking through the early morning haze, Betty found herself a nexus of anticipation and reflection. Today heralded the next workshop, infused with the promise of deeper engagement. Armed with pages of notes, she braced herself for a journey not only into collective storytelling but also into the uncharted territories of her own vulnerabilities. Her kitchen buzzed with energy as she prepared for the gathering. Each item cleaned, arranged, and set out represented her commitment to creating a safe haven for the stories that yearned to be told. Today would not merely be a repetition of the previous workshop, it would become a scaffold for peeling back layers, allowing emotions to surface and intertwine. Stepping into the community room, Betty felt her earlier trepidations transform into palpable excitement. The familiar faces began to trickle in again, yet there was a freshness to the atmosphere that made her pulse quicken. Each participant appeared ready not just to share but to become active agents in the mural's creation. "Welcome back," she enthused, her smile genuine as she gazed around the room. "Tonight is all about exploring those deeper parts of ourselves. We'll engage in techniques that let us express our stories through art." As she spoke, she could feel a shift among them, a shared readiness for exploration that mirrored her own. After some warm-up exercises designed to be fun yet intentionally vulnerable, she guided participants through a reflective storytelling activity. "Let us identify a moment in our lives that changed us," she proposed. "Write it down, but don't just focus on the event. Consider the emotions intertwined with it. What did it teach you? How did it shape your character?" As the room filled with murmurs, Betty circulated, offering gentle encouragement. She caught glimpses of fingers flying over paper, brows furrowing in concentration, tears discreetly brushed away. The authentic narratives unfolding organically lit a fire in her heart, a deep-seated acknowledgement that these experiences were inherently worthy of sharing. Yet as participants began to share their reflections aloud, a wave of apprehension surged through her. After hearing intense stories of loss, hardship, and gradual healing, she sensed a heavy responsibility resting on her shoulders. Holding space for their truth meant revealing her own. Could she summon the courage to share the tangled threads of her past? With a trembling hand, she stood. "As we delve further into each narrative, I want to share a pivotal moment for me," she began, her voice quaking but resolute. She recounted the moment she had abandoned her artistic pursuits out of self-doubt, recalling nights spent staring at old canvases, lost in the shadows of what could have been. As she spoke, she felt the weight of her audience's gaze. It was both terrifying and liberating. Their eyes reflected empathy, a mirror to her own struggles. Each story shared laid a brick in the foundation of community she longed to build. When she finished, the silence hung in the air, thick yet warm. The room erupted into supportive chatter. A young woman, teary-eyed, stood up to share her own struggles with self-doubt, how she longed to pursue her artistic talents but always found herself paralyzed by the expectations of others. The stories flowed, rippling through the atmosphere with a fierce collective energy that brought palpable warmth. As they transitioned into art-making, Betty felt buoyed by this newfound spirit. Brushes dipped in vivid colors clashed and harmonized on canvas, each stroke a testament not only to individual narratives but to shared resilience. The mural began to take shape. What had once seemed daunting now felt invigorating. With vivid brushstrokes creating a patchwork of tales, Betty revered how each participant had confronted their fears head-on. Stories of overcoming adversity mingled with moments of joy, reflecting the quilt of humanity they all belonged to. It was a metamorphosis of the soul, an enriching exploration distant from her initial perception of mere self-expression. Yet, even amid this transformation, the question of longevity lingered. Could she continue to facilitate such openness when discomfort lurked just beneath the surface? Would vulnerability continue to feel like an act of courage, or would it become a strain? By the time the evening drew to a close, the room was filled with laughter and camaraderie, a testament to the bonds forged through shared vulnerability. Exhausted and exhilarated, Betty gazed at the mural, now bursting with colors and narratives. It was more than just a painting, it was a living repository of strength, emotion, and community spirit. As she packed up her materials, the exhilaration of accomplishment flooded her heart. Returning home, she sat before her canvas, soaking in the night sky's tranquil hues. The mural had birthed not only a vibrant tapestry but a pivot in her life's narrative. Betty's phone chimed with messages of gratitude from participants, affirming the beauty of vulnerabilities shared. She realized in this journey, she wouldn't merely guide a mural, she would also chart her path through creative expression, strengthening connections, and fostering unity in honesty. That night, she lay in bed, her heart ready to embrace the potential of what lay ahead. The profound satisfaction of living her truth, of weaving her story into the stories of others, signaled an end to an old chapter, where she had been constrained by fear. Tomorrow signaled a new beginning, one where she continued to rise as both artist and advocate, stitching her narrative into the vibrant fabric of community and creativity she had ignited. And so, the journey of personal exploration continued. Her legacy, intertwining with those around her, had only just begun. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.